Hi, my name is Filippo Candela. I'm the data scientist of Compagnia di San Paolo Foundation, and for the Data for Policy 2020 International Conference, I'm going to present you my paper. The submission number is 64, and the title is Using Open Data to Monitor the Status of a Metropolitan Area, the case of the Metropolitan Area of Turin. Okay, as said, the title of our presentation is called Using Open Data to Monitor the Status of a Metropolitan Area, the case of the Metropolitan Area of Turin. I am part of the Impact Innovation Department. I am a data scientist, and this department is inside Compagnia di San Paolo Foundation, a large foundation of banking origin in Italy, especially in the Piedmont region. I have organized my presentation in these 4 points. So a brief presentation of our foundation, the research, the monitoring dashboard that we have developed during the scouting open data research, and the lesson learned and conclusion of our research. So let's begin with just some information about who we are. Compagnia di San Paolo Foundation is, as I said, a large foundation of banking origin founded in 1563, and has a huge assets in terms of portfolio, more than 7 billion euros. And as you can see on the right of the slide, it's one of the most important foundation in terms of donors in Europe, with on average about 200 million euros per year. We operate especially in the northwest of Italy. Our headquarters is in Turin, one of the largest city in Italy, but we have also projects at national and international level. One important point is that in 2020, Compagnia di San Paolo reorganized itself, adopting the 2030 agenda framework, following the framework of sustainable development goals. We are nowadays organized in 3 main areas of intervention called culture, people, and planet. So we operate in the field of culture, arts, performing arts, active participation, audience development, social policies, so related to welfare, work, etc., and in the quality of life, health, research, innovation. So today we are organizing in these 3 domains. Piedmont region, considering the topic of coronavirus epidemic, was one of the region touched the most by the epidemic. As you can see from the graph on the left of the slide, the municipality of Turin is the second per number of positive cases in Italy after Milan. And on July 20, we have more than 50,000 positive cases and more than 4,000 deaths due to COVID-19. This is an important point because it's part of our research, as we will see in the next slide. Okay, after this brief presentation of the Compagnia di San Paolo Foundation, let's go deep inside our research. COVID-19 epidemic started in Italy about on February 22nd, and in the first month of the epidemic, so probably from February to June, there was an increasing attention to data about positive cases in all the country, and it was in some way an example of an expecting popularity of open data. The the person on the left of the slide is the head of the Civil Protection Department that on a daily basis, as said, especially in the first month of the epidemic, communicates the number of positive cases on television. And there was a routine in some way of in weighting the number of positive cases inside the Italian population. And in some way this was quite interesting, because open data became very popular and very important, and this was also demonstrated by the high number of dashboards and other kind of analysis that we saw in the previous month. This is the famous Johns Hopkins University dashboard that was available and became very famous all over the world, with the number of cases in all the countries. So open data in this case made available data for citizens in order to understand the evolution of their data. This is not the moment, but there were also critical position about the communication of data about the epidemic to the population. This was an interesting topic. But there were also some interesting points, like the availability of data for professional or non-specialists, and the opportunity to perform many kinds of analysis. And the main point is that all this transformation, these dynamics, were available because the data were open. Just a little point about what is an open data. The Open Knowledge Foundation defines open data as data that can be freely used, shared and built on by anyone, anywhere, for any purpose. So it's a kind of data that is freely accessible for everyone. Everyone can download these data, can analyze them, can perform every kind of modeling, analysis, visualization. Open data has been studied for many years and are still in a moment of evolution. Tim Berners-Lee, for instance, has defined a classification of open data based on the quality and the complexity of this data, starting from, for instance, PDF data that are more difficult to manage, moving to CSV and other form and extensions of data that are more that are easier to use. So why we are interested in Compagnia di San Paolo Foundation to open data? Well, with the rise of the epidemic in Piedmont region and in the metropolitan area of Turin, the Impact Innovation Department of Compagnia di San Paolo started a reflection about how to use the open data in order to monitor the evolution of the epidemic inside the territory. It was difficult to think about the use of open data in order to calibrate the philanthropic activity of the foundation. But in some way we decided to try to perform an experiment to understand if in that moment it was possible to obtain a multidimensional analysis of the evolution of an entire city affected by COVID-19. And we were inspired from several theoretical multidimensional model, as for instance the biopsychosocial model. I am a psychologist. I have changed my profession over time, moving through data analysis and research, but I have maintained a baseline of psychological approach. And the biopsychosocial model of Engel, it's a good way to understand from theoretical point of view our approach. So we wanted to try to understand and to monitor the phenomenon of COVID-19 in the city, in the metropolitan area of Turin, from many different points of view, because only with many data belonging to several domains, it is possible to obtain a reliable and important interpretation on the phenomenon. So, for the construction, from the development of our monitoring system, we identified 6 requirements that you can see inside this slide. The first one, I have already mentioned it. It was the idea to collect data not only related to the number of positive cases of the epidemic, but to put inside the system also other kind of data, as data about economy, data about culture, data about environment, etc., etc. We were in a phase in which we thought that and we hoped that the epidemic would have ended in a short time. So to speed up our work, we decided only to use open data. We will see that in our system there are some violations to this assumption, but the main data of our monitoring system are open data. But open data were chosen in order to speed up our work, avoiding to start bureaucratic processes to ask data to private companies, etc., etc. We decided that data will be gathered on a daily basis because we wanted to preserve the idea of a daily monitoring of the evolution, to put together the daily data about positive cases with daily data of other kind of phenomena. As said, point 4 is strictly related to point 1. Data should cover several topics. Data should be available to January 1st because we wanted to analyze also the evolution starting from the beginning of the year, in which no cases were registered in Italy and in Piedmont, and we decided to accept also some kind of data that were not strictly related to the municipality of Turin, but also to the Piedmont region as a whole, thinking also that Turin is the largest city in Piedmont, and in some way, even with some limitations, data of Piedmont could be strictly related and correlated to the Piedmont region. So let's begin to see how and which data we were able to collect after a quick scouting activity of available open data. So first of all, the domain of epidemic. We collect obviously the total confirmed cases in the Piedmont region, Civil Protection Department data, new positive cases and total confirmed cases. These data were available by the city of Turin in an open data format, also in GitHub repository. We collect data about philanthropy. These are the main violation to our framework, because these are data that Compagnia di San Paolo Foundation owns, obviously, and there are so the number of grant requests submitted to Compagnia di San Paolo Foundation, and this is based on our informative system. The number of visitors and visualization of the Compagnia di San Paolo website through Google Analytics and LinkedIn page through LinkedIn Analytics. The main aim was to try to understand if during the rise of the epidemic there were an increase of requests by non-profit organization, data about stock market, so in general in Italian stock market index, kind of open data, but also the stock values of 4 companies located in Turin in different fields. So Intesa San Paolo, that is one of the most important bank in Italy, BasicNet, and Centrale del Latte, 2 companies related to fast-moving consumer goods, clothing and food and beverage, and a company about utilities. Obviously, these trends of stock values at closure were available in the majority of financial websites in open data format. Society was quite difficult, as you can imagine, to obtain. We decided to use the number of tweets containing the hashtag coronavirus Piemonte in Twitter. We also use Google Trends open data to monitor the number of research on Google from the keyword coronavirus performed in Piedmont region. There are many studies that have demonstrated a huge correlation between the rise of an epidemic and the number of research, and in some research the social network are used as modeling to predict the spread of epidemic, and also an estimate energy consumption in Piedmont region. In this case these data were not open. From the culture, well, lockdown that was decided in the beginning of March closed obviously all cultural activities, and it was interesting to us to use the Alexa Internet, a service by Amazon company, to collect data about ranking of some websites related to Turin and Piedmont region. First of all, the website of La Stampa, the most popular newspaper in Piedmont region. Then also two websites of two of the main cultural places in Turin, the Egyptian Museum and the Palace of Venaria. And then also the ranking of the website Media Library. This is a data about a website that is at the national level, so there is some limitation in the use of this data, but it's related to the use of digital book borrow. Again, data about traffic available in open data format by a Turin company, number of circulating vehicles in city of Turin, number of kilometers covered, etc., etc. Pollution, also available for the municipality of Turin, so particulate matter value, nitrogen dioxide value, and ozone value. So an image about the evolution of pollution in the municipality of Turin. And finally, data about the weather that we decided to identify, especially to control the effect of some phenomena like lockdown on the pollution. So we know that wind speed, air temperature, accumulated rain affects the pollution. So in order to create a multidimensional model of analysis, it was necessary also to collect control variable. So after the identification of these indicators, we obtain a large number of lessons learned that are part of our paper and our presentation, but we decided also to develop a dashboard, and it's a pleasure to us to present you briefly the dashboard that we used until the end of June 2020. So the COVID-19 epidemic in Turin and Piedmont region was analyzed using our dashboard that we are going to see briefly. So this is the first screenshot of our dashboard that we developed in Power BI. So this is the topic about epidemic. On the right, this is in Italian, obviously, language. On the right, we have a timeline of events that affect our territory. In March, as I said, there was the lockdown of the entire national territory, and then we started with several pages related to each of the domains that we have seen. So philanthropy, the trend of grant requests and navigation in website. In this case, we didn't see any specific trends by organization, because we interpreted this phenomena because it was the foundation that changed the trends, proposing grants and other kind of resources. From the economy, as you can see, after March, there was a huge decrease of value of stock in Italy, and also for the specific companies that I described to you in the previous slide, with some kind of differences. For instance, the banking was more touched that, for instance, Centrale del Latte, food and beverage in this field. Society, so as you can see from tweets and Google Trends data, there were a trend that was quite similar to the number of cumulative number of cases in Piedmont region. So this kind of trend that is similar to the real number of positive cases was confirmed. On the right, there is the trend about the energy consumption, and in March there was a decrease of energy consumption, probably related to the closure of industries. From the point of view of culture, this trend must be interpreted in an opposite way. So the decrease of the trend means an increase of popularity of the website. So it's quite clear that, for instance, on the bottom left in the red line, there was an increase of the use of online newspaper. For the traffic, also you can see a decrease in some way. For instance, at the bottom right, it's clearer with the number of daily entering in limited traffic areas, but in general there was obviously a limitation in the traffic due to lockdown. For the pollution, especially for PM10, there was a change at the end of February, but we are in a monitoring system, so for reliable data about the impact of lockdown to pollution, it will be necessary to perform complex model using also control variable like weather. So in this case, we are only monitoring the evolution. And obviously we are here also the weather data, so about wind, rain, humidity, and so on. So this was the physical implementation of our scouting activities in a monitoring system. Okay, let's go inside the lesson learned and conclusions of our research. So we decided to perform a scouting activity of open data in order to find data that helped us to understand the situation in the municipality of Turin during the epidemic. And this experience teaches us a lot of things that we think can be used on a general basis for the concept of open data for policies and well-being of the cities, societies, and communities. We have divided the lessons learned in 4 domains. Let's start with the first one, that is the need of more open data. We found a good set of open data, but we encountered problems in terms of time and space. Times because it was difficult to find open data on a daily basis. We wanted to put together daily data about epidemic with other kinds of data always on daily basis, and this was difficult. Open data are rarely in daily granularity, so this was a problem. We encountered also problem in terms of space, if you want to use this image, because we covered only a part of the large amount of domains that we need to understand deeply the daily life of a city. For instance, it was impossible to us to use data about the psychological well-being of citizens, local transportation use, consumption of internet, etc., etc. So first of all, it is important to increase the availability of data in terms of granularity, in terms of domains. The first point is if we need smarter open data. We find a good set, as said, of open data, but this data were rarely immediately available with, for instance, API or downloads of Excel, CSV, etc., etc. In many cases, we were obliged to collect data manually, and it would have been necessary to develop a web scraping solution that was very difficult to implement in a short time. And in some cases, this is a very important point, some data were deleted each day, so we were forced to collect them every day manually. So even if in some cities, for instance, Data USA, it's a great platform about open data. The city of London has an interesting platform about open data. But if we want to move towards the concept of smart cities, open data available in a easy format, it's an important point in which we have to reflect, because it is important that smart cities make available for researcher in an easy way data. The third point is the need of faster open data. We decided to use open data in order to speed up our work, but we tried to create communication with the local administrations and in order to obtain a very useful data, but even there was an interest and availability by the local administration, it was difficult to speed up a bureaucratic processes, so we decided to exclude them. So in many cases, public administration don't share data because these data are not used by anyone. So they started for normative reason, but they lose enthusiasm about open data project because no one is using this open data. So it is an important point for the use of open data for the well-being, for policies and society to analyze the real and the real use of local of open data of local administrations. And the last one is the need of private open data. The topic about the share of private open data is increasing a lot. On the right of the slide, you can see the experience of a research institute in Turin with a private company about data of cell phones. Many private companies are sharing their data for public good, but only with research institutions. So these data are shared to research institutions, but they are not available, for instance, in aggregate format in order to preserve privacy laws in an open data format. So, for instance, in this case, data about the movements of people inside the municipality of Turin could have been very useful for us, but it was impossible to obtain in an easy way this data because we're shared also between these research institutes and the private company. So if we want to try to create a theoretical framework about the use of open data for public good, for the use of the the availability for the cities, for citizens, for the well-being of the community, we can say that we need more open data, we need smarter open data, faster open data, and also private open data. So we are at the end of the presentation. We just want to see some other words about the fact that this was a project about the monitoring system of the epidemic inside the municipality of Turin, but you can interpret and translate this experience on a daily monitoring system that can be used for the support to the definition of policies of a city. It can be used to the monitoring status, monitoring of the so-called, let's say, well-being of a city. There are some studies about the power of data management in order to understand epidemic, for instance. So let's take just one question about the good points of our study. The fact is that in a very short time, without a significant commitment, it was a matter of 1 week of work, we were able to build this multidimensional monitoring system. It was an easy task. It was not so difficult to create this system, because we found easily the open data. We have strict rules to adapt our system, so we were forced also to exclude a large amount of data, but maintaining our rationale of data available, so data on a daily basis, data of different domains, data in open data format, it was very easy to create this multidimensional monitoring. It was not a complex task. From the limitation of our project and our experience, we have to say that there are still some great issues about the management and the exploitation of open data. First of all, the granularity is a problem. In many cases, data are not on a daily basis. There are data of published each month or in many cases each year, so it's difficult to obtain monitoring data about these topics. There are many topics, as said, that were not covered, and there was also the problem of data that are private, that are not shared or only shared for specific purposes. So there is a huge potential of open data for the use of this kind of specific and particular data for the well-being of communities and citizens, but the situation is still immature. So we have demonstrated, we hope that we are demonstrate to you that open data are a great way to monitor and study the well-being of a metropolitan city, and that a city can become a smart city also if it uses data in an open format. And these are my contacts in case you are interested in collaborations or other reflection and discussion. And thank you very much for your attention.